Hello guys, welcome to my first... Hello. Hello. Hi. Hello guys, welcome to my first YouTube channel. No. Well, it is my first YouTube channel. Okay, we're just gonna start. My name is Surina Taneja. I've just come to the end of my first year working as a junior doctor in the UK, and it wasn't quite how we'd all imagined it would turn out. It's been quite a year for everyone, I think that's fair to say. I thought it'd be a nice time to reflect. I thought it would be interesting for other people to hear from someone who was working in a hospital during the whole pandemic. Without further ado, here are my reflections of working as a doctor in the pandemic. Number one is a bit of a long one, but something that's important to me and I want to get off of my chest. We are not heroes. I did do a post about this on Instagram around about the time when this was all kicking off in May, and it did resonate with a lot of people. I appreciate the clapping, I appreciate all the love and well wishes that was sent towards the NHS and to all the key workers. I liked it for a week or two, everyone likes to feel appreciated, but soon I started to feel quite uncomfortable about it all, and for a while I couldn't really figure out why I was so uneasy. The questions all medical students, doctors, nurses, anyone wanting to be in the healthcare profession fears is, why do you want to do this job? And it's because there are only so many answers, but one of the really common ones is that because you care for people. It's not something you want to say in an interview because it's very unoriginal, but I think that's testament to what kind of people make up the healthcare industry. They are people who care. But I would turn that around and say, would you not care about people? And by that I mean, if someone falls on the road in front of you, would you not go and help them and check they're okay? I would like to imagine that you would. And it's pretty much the same at work. There's someone in front of you who is suffering, and we need to work out how to alleviate their suffering and what the cause is. If someone is presenting in front of you and they need your help and you have the ability to help them, then you would do so. And when you're working in the healthcare industry, that basic instinct and that basic quality of human kindness just happens to be your job. At the end of the day, a job that pays the bills, that lets you utilize skills that you've learned, and hopefully you enjoy it as well. But okay, yes, granted that we suddenly were put in the middle of a pandemic and had to go a little bit above and beyond our remit because we were working in an unfamiliar environment, having to be a lot more flexible than normal, working in uncertain times, not knowing very much about this disease and not knowing exactly if our hospitals would be able to cope. It was quite difficult. The thing is, NHS workers died. They gave up their lives to do their job, and that is completely unacceptable and not something I think needs to be applauded. By clapping for all these people who are dying and falling unwell, they're saying, thank you for risking your lives for us, for putting your families at risk. Thank you for dying for us. And that is just so problematic to be normalizing every week. And this is the thing that blew my mind the most. The very people who are clapping, and by that I mean the politicians, the people you're seeing on the TV, those are the people who have been firstly responsible for the lack of any protective clothing to keep these workers safe, and secondly responsible for so many cuts that have been adding to the deficiencies in the NHS. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know this was unknown territory for everyone and impossible to plan for, but by this point, weeks are passing, even months into the pandemic, and we're still not seeing any real resolution. It's sad to see these people clapping, because by clapping, you're washing your hands of all responsibility, all accountability. People have taken steps to put this message out in the public as well. I know there were some doctors who protested outside of Downing Street with signs something like along the lines of "We are not martyrs." or we are not heroes. And I know they were trying to give that message out to the public that I've been trying to articulate today. We had a member of staff at our hospital die from COVID. The Thursday after his death, we went out with signs for him, and we stood outside the hospital where the claps usually happen, and it was hugely emotional and just cemented all the feelings I'd been having in the weeks before. I think I've said everything I can say. So sorry that first point was very heavy, but something that will always stay with me from this experience. The next ones are a lot more straightforward and shorter. I hope you've stuck with me this far to find out what else I've learned from this year. Okay, second on my list is that learning truly is lifelong. And this is something they tell you straight from the beginning. It's a sort of a buzz phrase, that lifelong learning will be a big part of your job. You have to keep up with the latest research, with any updates in treatment. And usually everyone's learning at different levels, so we as juniors have got such a lot to learn, and it's quite a steep learning curve. But you know, by the time you're quite senior, your skills are quite refined and you're much quicker in making decisions and assimilating lots of information. One really unique part about this pandemic was it kind of got rid of all of the hierarchy which runs throughout medicine and put us all on quite a level playing field, because we all knew nothing. As a junior, you're always hoping that someone else knows what to do when you're panicking or struggling, and there is always someone who knows. But this was unique in that no one knew. Our hospital, different members of staff were putting together webinars, guidelines based on things that they were learning anecdotally and from preliminary research collected by other countries like China and Italy, to try and collaborate and put together what they're observing from the patients who are coming in with symptoms of COVID, what's working and what's not. And all of that was being put together and disseminated to us, and then we were watching it together. For example, when the dexamethasone guidelines were updated, I sat down with a respiratory consultant and we looked through the guidelines together, like, oh, okay, so we need to be giving this dexamethasone now because that's what the latest evidence shows, and then we prescribed it. So yeah, it was a nice bit of learning for everyone. Number 3 is that teamwork really does make the dream work. When you start work as a junior doctor in a busy hospital, especially if it's a out-of-hour shift like a night shift or on call in the evenings, you feel very alone and very responsible, and it's really quite overwhelming. You soon realise that you are only just one doctor, and it's actually quite humbling to realise how big your team is and how much you rely on so many different people to achieve the one thing you're all trying to achieve, which is good patient care. Within moments of starting the job, you realise how useless you are without the know-how of all the nurses, without the discharge planning team, without people like the physiotherapists, the dietitians, the occupational therapists, the porters, the radiographers. Without every single one of those people, you cannot get a patient who presents to you unwell and out the other side feeling better, hopefully, and being able to manage their condition at home. So much goes into that, and that was a lot to learn. Yeah, it's just a mind-blowing network of people who keep the NHS going every second of every day. And then of course your fellow doctors are so important. Arguably you spend more time with them than your family because of the long working hours, and it's such a nice support system because you can all truly empathise with each other. And I mean, you know, the other F1s who you're starting out with, they understand how scary it is and how overwhelming it is. You get quite familiar with the doctors who are on your rotation or in your department because you're seeing them every day and working with them every day, but you can go through the whole year without ever having met some people. And that was another really nice thing about the COVID rotas, which most of the hospitals adapted, was that the teams got completely mixed with each other. There was no sort of respiratory team and gastro team. It was just one big team.
And what team?
This constant reshuffling of teams was a really nice way to meet lots of people. So I had a really nice time just getting to know all these people. Okay, point number 4, I think. Having a full-time job is long. What I'm trying to say is that I do love this career, but carrying on doing it full time is not going to be sustainable for me, I don't think. And that's quite a personal ideology. Yes, this year has thrown lots of extra challenges on top of an already quite challenging job, but for me, quite early on, I recognised that the amount of time I was putting into this job was a lot more than I was happy with. And I know going forward, I want to be able to give enough time to lots of different things, be that medical education, content creation, possibly having a business on the side, even having a family one day. And I want to be able to give a good amount of time to all of those things. So what does that mean? I guess what I've learnt this year is, I think when I finish my foundation training, so I've got 1 more year left because it's 2 years in total. When I come to the end of those 2 years, I will be taking a complete break from medicine, which is really, really common. But when I do come back to training, and I will because I do love being a doctor, I will probably come back to less than full-time training, which, as the name suggests, you're not working full-time, it's basically part-time. No, it'll take me a lot longer to become a consultant if I do less than full-time, but I'm okay with that, and that's something I've only really realised after this year. Like, there's no point running and crying the whole time you're running. I'd rather just walk and smile. That was kind of weird. But you get what I mean. Okay, number 5, and the last one you'll be glad to know, is to be alive and somewhat healthy is a wonderful thing. And there's no real way of not sounding cliched when you say that. You see some really horrible things in the hospital, and the pandemic was of course no exception to that. In fact, it was arguably even worse because not only were patients suffering and falling quite unwell, they were alone for the whole time. The policies for visitors coming in were so strict, understandably. It meant that we had to deliver some really heavy news about the fact that their relative may never get better. Seeing these things and being part of these conversations every day, watching people live their last days in the hospital, it really hits home how grateful one must be for their life. This year it's really reinforced how you should never take a single day, a single moment for granted. So yeah, those are all my reflections. I hope you enjoyed listening to them. I hope it gave you a bit of insight into what it's been like for the past few months and for the past year. That's everything I have to say. Thank you very much for watching. Has really brought to I speak so fast. Looking at NHS linked to I'm so bored of the sound of my voice.